Hello, everyone. My name is frankanthony, and welcome back to Let Me Be Frank. This is episode 27. Quick little fun fact before we start. 27 is actually my least favorite number, 12 being my favorite number. 27, ever since I was a kid, I had really bad luck with the number 27 for some reason. For example, there would be like some basketball player when I used to watch as a kid, or football player, they'd be 27. I'd be like, oh, that player's going to make that player, he's going to do really well. And then he'd do really bad. And then 27 ended up being my ex's birthday, my ex that stalks me. So I was like, that number is a cursed number for me in general. But today's episode, we have a very special guest. I appeared on their podcast called Nose on the Wall, and now he decided to be brave and join this podcast for a guest appearance. I appreciate that so much. So we're going to go right into the first segment, which is Phone a Friend with Justin Reid. Hey, Justin, how's it going?
It's going. Thanks for having me.
No problem. No problem. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about who Justin is. And the way I word it on my show is, if you were a novel, what would the back of your book say?
Goodness, there's a couple ways to approach it, right? There's I can run you through my resume, and then I can run you through the person behind the resume, and they're in a lot of ways similar and a lot of ways very different. So the quick route of my resume is I am a classical saxophonist turned nonprofit fundraiser turned investment manager. And what led to all of those pivots was someone who was very driven but didn't know what direction to go into, right? So when I was growing up, I was always independent and ambitious, but I was ambitious in spurts, right? So I'm all in on this one thing, and then I got bored, and then I would go all in on this other thing, and that has kind of defined my path so far, and has defined really who I am as short spurt ambitious man who is trying to reel that in to actually have a long-term career in life and all that fun stuff.
And by the way, too, yeah, you can swear too. So
Oh, gotcha.
You're good there. We don't have to cover it. I don't bleep anything out. I don't have the patience for editing. P.S. I need an editor. Anyway, but no, I can definitely relate to that. I've had to, like, especially I think about college. I think about how I've been a music major, I've been a writing, like, English major, I've been a psych major, and it's like, damn, what's gonna work?
You were a music major too?
That was one of my first. I did choir in
okay.
junior high and high school. I did district choir, and I won the Gregory Wren Award at my high school for 2010. 10 years already, and yeah, so I thought, like, oh, I'm gonna, like, be this musician, or I'm gonna learn how to play piano, because I didn't know how to play any instruments, and
right.
Damn, I did not have the patience.
It's horrible. Yeah, I finished my music degree. Ultimately, my undergrad was in saxophone, and it's just, oh my God, it's brutal, man. It's 4 hours a day of locking yourself in a box and getting marginally better, and
Yeah.
you can only take so much of that before you want to shoot yourself in the face. It's horrible.
Oh yeah, it took me about a month to learn Jingle Bells on piano. And I was like, I finally did it. My fingers are bleeding in my head. Like, I finally did it. And then they'd be like, okay, now another song. You're like 3 weeks late with that assignment.
Right. Yeah,
but
no, it was a nightmare.
What made you switch to all these different things?
Well, everything was kind of an extension of the last, right? So I was doing the music student thing and hating it, but because of where I was credit-wise, I just had to kind of, keep my head down and finish, right?
Yeah.
So when I was doing some soul searching, I was like, all right, my background's in the arts. This is the only thing I have any talent or I've shown any interest in so far. So I guess I got to kind of stay in this world. What do I do? And the natural extension of that is, I'll manage the arts, right? So I applied and I did my master's in arts administration, where I was working in symphonies and ballets, primarily in fundraising, right? And that was kind of adjacent to being a performer, but I was able to get out of it. So it was kind of that was the next step out of being in the performer world.
Gotcha.
And then from there, when I was working for the Cincinnati Ballet, and
Wow.
in their fundraising department, and it was a great organization. At the time, needed a little help in the administrative side of the organization because they were kind of a hot mess, and so I was working there and fundraising, and just by nature of the nonprofit space, a lot of board members work in finance. That's just kind of, you got finance and lawyers and doctors and all those high money careers that they can ask for money from, right? So a lot of my work in fundraising was talking to board members and talking to some of the folks that worked in the investment industry, and they kind of, turned me on to the idea. So I kind of ran with it and threw out some applications and ultimately landed at the company that I'm at now in the investment space. And can't say where just because of disclosure policies for,
Gotcha.
for the company.
That
but,
makes sense.
And yeah, so I've been doing that for 3 years now.
That's awesome. What
Yeah.
made... So obviously I mentioned earlier too that I was on your podcast, which you guys should go check that out. It's called Nose on the Wall. And I was in episode 7?
I believe so, yeah.
Episode 7. Yeah, so it's been at least a few episodes ago, but I know what the premise of the show. I'm assuming I know what the premise of the show is. I was on it. But for people that haven't listened to the show yet, what is the premise of your show, and how did you start this whole podcast to begin with?
Sure. So Nose on the Wall, it basically we just dive into childhood stories. That's really that's we get nostalgic together, right? So I ask some leading questions about, your favorite smell from childhood or your favorite meal experience in grade school, whatever, to just to trigger all those memories and look back on them fondly. That's the idea, right? Just to have a nice conversation about, the good old times in a way. How we got there, I was sitting on the couch with my wife, and we just had one of those random conversations that kept us up till 2 a.m, just talking about, do you remember this in high school? Oh, what did your dad do in this case? And I was like, this is just a fun conversation to have, right? And we went on for hours and hours, and I think anyone really can, especially with how crazy the world is right now, right? With between COVID and all the political, back and forth, and it's a nice escape from reality to look back on. I remember playing with this toy when I was 7. Like, that's just a nice escape. And the name stemmed from my dad's go-to punishment when we were growing up of having us put our nose on the wall, right? It was, if my brother and I were arguing, it was nose on the wall, go, right? And then if we talked, we got an extra minute. And I'm a long-winded person, so I would be like, "Can I get off the wall now?" He's like, "You're not getting this game, man. That's another minute. Can I please come off? Figure out the rules. Stop talking." And but that's how it ultimately came to be. It was just, I got the name from, my own experience and the premise from that conversation with my wife, and I've had a lot of fun talking to folks about their childhoods and basically how we all came to be who we are, right?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree too. It is awesome to look back or think about certain things, or some things in our childhoods continue on, like playing Pokemon, for example.
Which I was doing about 10 minutes before we started recording. Yeah.
I wish I was. I had to plan shit.
Yeah. You don't have the freedom like I do on a
It's
Saturday
like, I
morning.
hate being the host. No.
Yeah, being a guest is easy. I just show up and start rambling. It's great.
Which we'll get to ramble a little bit more too when we get into the next segment, because you mentioned political stuff too, which I don't really talk too political on here because of just obvious reasons, but we will talk a little bit about the cabinet members later on, and we're going to talk about a certain show too. And we actually have not only one. Last week we only had one question from the audience, but we have 2 this week. So
okay.
Thanks, guys. I'll shout you guys out later on if you guys decide to still listen through all this. So by the way, you have a great podcast speaking voice.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know, like, I listened to it, I'm like, I could just listen to that like on the radio or on a podcast for hours.
Yeah, it was funny. I was talking to my mom, and she goes, "You just have such a nice radio voice," and I was like, "Thank you, Mom." And it was a very touching moment. And I remember I went to my wife, and I was like, "My mom says I'm good for radio."
It is though. It's not like it's a good NPR voice without being boring NPR. It's a good speaking voice.
I was thinking of doing some ASMR type recordings and just seeing how that goes.
Yes, I would join that OnlyFans. Now that I would subscribe to that channel.
Well, I might be starting an OnlyFans here soon. It's going to be half ASMR and half really disturbing videos of my soft, tender body. But
it depends. Yeah, it really depends how long this pandemic keeps going. Seriously.
Dude, people are rocking it though on OnlyFans. Just I know we're joking, but for real, people are paying their bills and then some.
Yeah, I mean,
stuff.
I shouldn't know this, but I heard that I don't know if you know Trisha Paytas.
I don't know.
Her and Bella Thorne. I don't know if those names are familiar.
She was a Disney girl, right?
Yeah, they're far from Disney now, but they they each have made at least $1 million.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's like, wow. So now everyone's jumping on it, and
yeah. Well, and if you look at like for the Disney chick, it's like because she was on that one show with
Shake It Up.
With Zendaya.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, okay, let's see how their careers have gone. Zendaya, she's in Spider-Man and she's rocking it, and then you got Bella, who's on OnlyFans.
I'm Bella Thorne, bitch. That's one of her songs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, sure.
Or bitch, I'm Bella Thorne. It's something like that. It's crazy.
Right.
I know.
You see all the Disney people like rebelling. Miley went through her wild phase. This is just her Miley. That's what I think.
Well, Miley's like this rock princess now. She was, what was it? Billboard said she was #1 rock album or like rock
really?
Start. Yeah, for this year. I was like, this pandemic is fucked. I know I like Miley Cyrus, but
her song, I think Malibu, to use one of my sister's words, slaps.
I will admit she came out with a new album and it's more rock like. That's why people are saying that. And there's a couple songs, Plastic Hearts. There's a couple slappers or knee slappers.
Right.
But yeah, we're getting a little carried away. All right, back to the questions. Sure. Talk about a serious question. I almost forgot I put this, but I like to ask this question, even though this is the first time I'm asking it on the podcast. But I'm starting to want to ask this question because I feel like it's always good to see how people have grown over time from certain mistakes or failures. So what is one of your biggest failures and what did you learn from it?
That is a good question. I think it would really come down to, let me back up with saying I'm very much a people pleaser, right? So I have a history of trying to make everyone happy, oftentimes at my own expense, right? And that really came to light when I was in grad school and I was working. I was in my assistantship at the university. I was also working 2 part-time jobs and trying to please every single person along the way. All the supervisors, all the coworkers, everything. And it was getting to the point where I was getting 2 to 4 hours of sleep a night. And also I was in my master's degree, right? And so I was completely overworked and just caving under the pressure, and I wasn't talking to anyone about it, right? So I was just suffering silently. And I think the growth came from finally being able to talk to someone about it, right? And in this case, it was my then fiance, now wife, who at the time I was keeping it from everyone, right? I was just like I have to keep my head down and keep trucking, and this is only temporary. And the problem was that it wouldn't be temporary because I had a history of it, and it was always temporary. And if something's temporary for 23 years, chances are it's not temporary. It's just embedded in who you are. So, and how it came out was in a complete and total meltdown. I mean, like, sobbing on the bed. I mean, it was not a pretty sight, just a blubbering mess, right? But at that moment, for the first time, I had some, I guess, this is something that most people would be sympathetic towards, I'm sure, but I had convinced myself that it was like a me against the world type of thing. I just got to do this by myself, and no one's here to help me. And that was the mistake, was having that mindset. And when I did ultimately cave and had the breakdown, and having my wife say, hey, this sucks, why don't we try to do something about it? And realizing that I had the support and I had the outlet to talk to when things were rough, I think that's where the growth started. And now I bitch too much about my work. And she's like, yeah, I get it. Shut up. But I'd rather do that than keep it all in.
No, and you're totally right. And it's awesome that you discovered that support system. I'm assuming that's a picture of you in the background with her on the wall.
So we have our little wedding wall here.
Nice.
Yeah, married, goodness, 2.5 years now.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a very busy couple, like a very busy month, because I accepted my job at the investment company when I had about 8 weeks left of my master's degree. So I was working full time. This kind of lends itself to what I was just talking about. I was working full time for the new company. I was also working my assistantship, which was about 15 hours a week. I also had an internship that I needed to satisfy my program requirements, which was 10 hours a week, and I was finishing 2 master's degrees. So I would wake up at like 5, get to the assistantship at 7 or so, and then do that, rush to the investment company, do that all day, and then come home, do my internship assignments, requirements, work, whatever I was doing, and then start my homework. It was insane. I did that for 8 weeks, and then ultimately it came down to I had my graduation one weekend, my wedding the next week. Oh, and we were planning our wedding. My graduation one weekend, my wedding the next weekend, and then the following weekend I had to take one of my licensing tests for my investment job, the thing that would like allow me to actually be legally allowed to do my job. So it was like, after that test was done, I was like, I have nothing to do. This is awesome. Everything was done, and I didn't know what to do with myself. I just played Skyrim all day. I had no idea
awesome.
what to do with my time, because I had never had just a 9 to 5. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was
No,
crazy.
I give you a lot of props for going through all of that. I know before I entered my internship era at psych, it just all fucking went to shit.
Yeah.
And everything happened. And I just didn't finish, but like it went to that much shit. But
Right.
so I give you a lot of props and a wedding on top. I mean, weddings are stressful as it is. Not that I've been married, but I know it's like to be part of one, and it just that's freaking crazy. And it is weird when it's like you're going through the storm and then you're at the calm of it and everything settles down, and then you're like, wow, yeah, what do I do now? Like last night, I didn't know what to do after working all day. I went to bed at 9 p.m.
We are now those people who are, it's like 8:30 rolls around, I'm like, time for bed. It's crazy. It's crazy. A month ago, I was an 11 p.m. midnight guy. And now we tried it. My wife just recently got a job as a ski instructor, and she had to do this little like ski instructor camp thing, and the mountain's about an hour and a half away from us, right? So she was up at 5, and my wife is not the kind of person who is up at 5, right? So we were going to bed just in preparation for her camp thing. We were going to bed at like 8 or 9 o'clock, and then I woke up just no alarm clock, nothing, at like 4:30, and I was like, this is nice. I could get used to this. And I kind of looked at her, I was like, do you like this? And she's like, I don't want to admit it, but I like this. So now we just do that. It's great. It's awesome.
I love the little sample of ASMR.
Yeah, you like that?
And that two more quick questions, and then we can go right into Frankly Speaking. So I have to ask this because we talked about it on yours a little bit, and you mentioned it again with Pokemon. What is your favorite Gen 1 Pokemon?
Oh, goodness. Gen 1. So I would have to say... This is going to be such like a basic answer,
Okay,
but I have
it's okay
to go
to be
Bulbasaur.
basic.
I have to go Bulbasaur.
That is kind of basic.
But here's the thing: he's small and he's cute, and he's a dog with an onion on his back, and all he wants to do is be your friend and help out where he can, and he's the best starter, hands down.
I don't know. Maybe this should have been a Frankly Speaking.
Yeah, no. He's the best starter. There's not very many viable grass-type Pokemon in Gen 1, or there are viable fire and water-type Pokemon, right? So in terms of team balance, he's the best for that slot, right? And he's tanky, so you got that special wall, and he's got a good versatile moveset. He's the best starter, and if you're new to the game, he's best for initial progression because you have your first two gyms are rock and water, right? So if you pick Charmander, you're fucked. Figure that out. If you don't know how to play Pokemon, yeah, good luck, right? I know he's a cute lizard, but you're not gonna have a good time. And then Squirtle's kind of the just in between. But yeah, no, Bulbasaur. Final answer.
All right, I'll agree to disagree. I'm definitely not agreeing that he's the best starter, but I mean, like I said, that might just be an added debate. I don't know, or another time. Or
I'm happy to fight this to the grave. So whenever you find time, let me know.
Oh, definitely. This will have to be another episode. I think. I like a good Vileplume. I will admit, I like a good Vileplume.
That is fair.
But I mean, you are right. There's not a lot of there weren't really a lot of good grass types in Gen 1. The more I think about it,
yeah, Victory Bell, like what?
No, he was just funny because what was it? Team Rocket had him or what? Right. The last question is, what are the best links to follow you on social media or other outlets? How can we?
Sure. So primarily on Instagram at Nose on the Wall, and then you can find the podcast Nose on the Wall wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, Overcast, all sorts. It's now on iHeartRadio if you're one of those folks. So wherever you get your podcast, it's most likely there. You can search either Nose on the Wall or Justin Reid, which is Justin and then Reid, Reid.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna put all the links in the description too, because this is also on YouTube and in the podcast description too.
Gotcha.
Obviously.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, go follow him.
Please do.
Yes, I'll say, and follow me too if you're not following, because probably most of you aren't. Anyway, so now we're gonna move on to the next segment, Frankly Speaking. So this is where we talk about usually 2 to 3 topics, and we talk open, honest, and unfiltered. I will admit and promise I will not get as heated as I did last week when I was alone. Oh. It's very strange, like just ranting about something, and you're not even talking to anyone else, and you're just ranting alone,
Sure.
But long story short with that, I just got a little mad over people who were reselling the PlayStation 5 at astronomical prices.
Oh, right.
And stuff. That was just a little rant.
Gotta love price gouging.
Yeah. But so let's start with, we are going to talk about, which it's just funny because it's kind of random, but we're going to talk about the show Queer Eye.
Can I tell you, I fucking love Queer Eye. I love it. I want to be Tan France's friend so badly.
Is he your favorite?
Of course.
Of course. See, not mine.
Here's my ranking, all right? It's Tan, Tan, Bobby, Jonathan. Those are the top 3. And there's a big gap. And then it's Karamo, and then down in the gutter is Anthony.
No.
Here's this might be a divisive comment. Fuck Anthony. And here's why. He thinks he's a psychologist, and he tries to impose he has a psych degree. I did a lot of research on this because it was like,
Okay.
why is he making such an imposition on these people's lives? Being like, here's a tomato. Why did your mom not hug you? It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Make your fucking tomato and get out of the kitchen. What are we doing here? So anyway, so he has a psych degree. So he originally wanted to be the Karamo role, right? And Karamo's like, which the way he grew in that role kind of started getting a little pretentious as the seasons went on, right? Because it started off like, this is about culture, woohoo, and then it kind of turned into like, I'm gonna force you to do the things you don't want to do because it's good TV, right? And it's like, not everything needs to be like this deep conversation, but that's the program. I get it. As the seasons went on, he got kind of boring, but Anthony's just like trying to force every single moment that he can get more than I'm just making salmon. He tries to like squeeze it out of the showtime, and how it's executed is by screaming, and that's where I don't like him, because if I have to hear out of nowhere, it's a nice calm thing. They're trying on some clothes. Tan's like, hey, check out the guy. Look how nice he looks. And then Anthony would be like, oh my God, look at blah, blah, blah. I'm like, shut the fuck up. I can't deal with you. I can't. Every single time he talks, my wife and I go, please stop talking. We are so anti-Anthony.
Oh, wow.
And firmly so. As a unit, we can't do it. We can't do it. Especially when you've got Tan, Jonathan, and Bobby, who are sweet, sincere people who are getting that same, relationship building, whatever, purpose that they're doing. But they're doing it, I feel, authentically. Whereas it seems forced from Anthony. So that is my position. I'm getting a little heated.
I know. I guess I shouldn't
dial it back a little bit.
I shouldn't make promises, huh? No. Well, just in case, before, I didn't even think about a ranking, but I can do that in a second. Before I get into that, maybe some people listening are like, what the fuck are they talking about? So Queer Eye is a show on Netflix. I know you went in, you're like, fuck Anthony. So Queer Eye is a show where these 5 guys, are they, not 100% sure about, are they all gay?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if any were non-binary or if there was a straight one in the mix.
It started off as gay guys give straight white guys makeovers.
Yeah.
That was like back in the...
With Ted Allen.
Yeah. So that was the original show, and they started off in the early seasons with that same format, ultimately ended up expanding they call them heroes.
Okay.
To whatever inspirational story. This person lost a leg and donates research to whatever. Aren't they great? And then let's make them pretty. That's kind of how it turned into as the seasons progressed. And that's not a criticism. I love it. Let me be clear.
Well, yeah, I had to, especially the last couple days, I really was I had to rewatch the episodes. I hadn't seen it since, I think I saw an episode last year, maybe just randomly. And then I had to refresh myself. I'm like, let me make sure I know, like, kind of remember. I kind of remembered them. But, so Anthony is, I guess I should say this loosely. They're experts on these things because I don't want to trigger Justin over here. So Anthony is an expert on the food and wine stuff. Tan is on fashion. Karamo, I could not get his name. I remember... when I was typing up my notes, it kept coming out like Camaro. Right. I was like, fucking A, it's Karamo is culture, and which I also say like culture / advice because he really tries to push advice.
It's basically like, he's like, let's do forced therapy is what it is.
Yeah, he's like, you're not confident, be confident. I swear he said that.
Some of the things that he does, I'll let you finish the descriptions.
Okay, and then I'll let you go.
Here.
Okay, so Bobby is design, like on usually the house or place or wherever location, And Jonathan is grooming like their hair and their appearance in that way.
So the moments where Karamo really makes me roll my eyes is when he tries to do these forced life outlook type things where he was like, we're gonna go for a stroll, and then they're walking, and then he goes, look behind you, and they look and they're, oh, look at all this path behind me, and he goes, look how far you've come. I'm like, what the fuck lazy ass TV is this? What? Come on. Meanwhile, Bobby is doing an entire HGTV series by himself, I might add, flipping houses in a week, and he's the most talented. Period.
Yes, I can definitely agree. I think he definitely does the most work.
He does the most work by a lot. Like, there's a pretty significant margin there. It's just like Tan, I'm going to pick out your clothes, and then I'm going to cut your hair. I'm going to make you some guacamole. We're going to walk down a path. I'm going to restore your entire home alone. What? He has to be paid the most. Otherwise, I'm going to be really upset because he does.
See, and I thought they were all paid. I thought they were all paid the same.
They probably are, but it's not fair. Bobby needs more money.
I agree. Well, I noticed too, Jonathan. I've been seeing him in Uber Eats commercials and stuff. So he must be getting some bank now. Like he's starting to get more.
He is. Tan and Jonathan are generally the fan favorites.
Yeah,
that's kind of just how that goes. And if you look at their Instagram followings, it's reflective of that too. Jonathan being leaps and bounds above the rest. And I think that's because of a lot of his gender equality positions and movement that he's involved in, which is what really makes him rise to the top as far as his following goes. But yeah, no, Bobby does so much work. It's crazy. And I want him to come to my house and do something. I don't know. Whatever he does, I'll be like, this is beautiful.
He probably could have his own show. I could see that.
For sure. And he's super inspiring because he was a high school dropout who was homeless after dropping out of high school.
I didn't know that.
His as far as the stories go, his is the story. Because, high school dropout, he came out as gay in a super religious family. And they just were like, nope. Oh, and he was adopted before that. So he was adopted and then shunned after he came out. Ended up being homeless, sleeping in cars and on friends' couches and everything. And then was one of those moved to New York with $20 in my pocket kind of stories. And just started working in, I don't know what the companies were, but, interior design and furniture type places. And just worked up and then ended up being some, the creative designer at some big name New York City interior design place, and then launched his own thing. So really from a rags to riches type of story. And then I think that shows in his humility, and then also just how good he is because he had something to prove always. So
yeah, I agree.
That's my take on Bobby.
we love a good rags to riches. Are you ready for my ranking? You might not like it.
Okay, let's hear it.
I was gonna say you might not like it, and the audience might not. I don't know, but Jonathan is my number one. Then Bobby.
Okay.
Then Anthony.
Wrong, but keep
and
going.
Then it's really hard for me to choose the lowest between Tan and Karamo.
What are you fucking talking about? How is Tan even a contender for the bottom?
He seems pretentious as fuck to me, and I know you just because you were like he's a sweetheart, and I'm holding it in. I'm like I don't know, that parrot haired man, which I have parrot hair.
You are so wrong. Nope. No, I refuse your rankings. Much like the election results, I'm gonna be one of these people who I'm gonna sue you, and I force you to flip the results because that is wrong. That is not democracy. Tan is not. He doesn't have to be your favorite. I give you that, but he is not a bottom contender.
You missed your opportunity. You could have told me to put my nose on the wall.
Yeah. That's not a punishment suiting the crime. We are so beyond nose on the wall.
I'm not gonna lie. With Anthony, I will admit that 70-80% of my rating for him is he's a good-looking guy.
Yeah. That's why he's on the show, because he's like the classic hunk-looking guy.
He is. He's a good-looking man. I mean, they're all good-looking and stuff, but yeah, he's my favorite in that department. But I will admit, yeah, when you were talking about him and stuff, I was gonna counter and say they all kind of try to do the little advice thing. Like I noticed Jonathan would do it a little bit, but
it's in line with what their expertise is in, right? So
yeah,
Tansy's like, what about your body and your clothes, and how can we get past this, this body image type thing? Jonathan is like, look what shaving your beard can do, blah 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 blah. And then Bobby's like, you want to be happy in your space, and this is how we're gonna do that. And then Anthony's just like, here's an orange, talk about your dad. It doesn't line up for me at all.
And I guess, I mean, yeah, how can you line up food?
Okay. The most ridiculous one. They were doing some like firefighter guy, and his meal, his food expert gourmet meal was, I shit you not, hot dogs, fucking hot dogs. What are we doing here? Yeah, we got to the point where we just skip the Antony's. We just like, I can't do it. I'm sorry.
I will admit the recipes aren't the most. It's no Gordon Ramsay. I will admit, like episode 1 of season 1, I think was like grilled cheese. Like it's not the most like.
Right. It's like, what are we doing here, man? Like, just make it 4 people. Like, we don't need 5. We don't need the Fab 5. The Fab 4, it's still alliteration. Get rid of Anthony. I'm done. I can't do it. But no, the fact that you have tan towards the bottom truly offends me deeply.
And I'm sorry and not sorry all at the same time. maybe it'll change. I do kind of like him, but then like I want to like him and Karamo more, but then yeah, I don't know. They just say certain things that feel off to me, or that feel like almost looking down.
Right. A lot of it also is going to be a cultural difference, right? Like the way British people talk to each other is very different than how we, as Americans do, right? We tend to kind of, dance around the topic, and just in Europe altogether, it's far more direct, and it's not meant to be hurtful.
Yeah.
It's just more direct, right? And I can vouch for that personally. When I was in France, not as a brag, a couple years ago, and it was the French people were just like, move, like you're in my way, and it wasn't like get the fuck out of my way. It was, you're in my way. I'm walking by. Move. Like, and it was. We would read it as aggressive. They don't, right? And it's not uncommon for them to literally grab your shoulders and move you, if you're in the way on like the tram or whatever. So yeah, you just kind of you have to get used to that dynamic of it, and I think it opens your perception of him.
It might. I mean, yeah, that is a good point. I will admit that's a good point. I realize too, we are just flying through the time, and we only, I'm like, holy crap. But I did want to bring up. There was a lot of things I want to bring up, but at least with Queer Eye, one thing that I definitely wanted to bring up was season 1, episode 1. I promised I watched more than just that one episode, but because like, for example, season 3, episode 3, I made a note about the Jones sisters barbecue. I thought that whole, the work they did was just amazing. I mean, they even fixed one of the women's teeth and stuff. And they redid, their restaurant, like their little, establishment, and they made bottles of their barbecue. Like, it was just, oh my God. So
it was awesome.
Crazy. I was crying during that one.
And let me say that I know I'm coming off very critical, but what they do on the show is fantastic. Like that.
Oh yeah.
All the criticisms are nitpicky within the framework of these people are changing lives and making a huge impact on people. So, Anthony is fine, but relative to once we get past that point, he sucks. But
I was just gonna say, but you think he sucks?
Yeah, but no, the show. I mean. Yeah, obviously they're doing good, so I'm not angry at any one person for doing the least amount of good in the show.
Well, season 1, episode 1, there was something that was brought up. I kind of wish they did this in more episodes, and they just don't really, I don't think. But
Right.
I thought it was interesting because I forgot the guy's name. He was an older man in the very first episode. I don't remember his name, though. He's from Kentucky or something. But he was asking them, like, he was asking, I think it was Jonathan and Bobby in the car, and he was asking them if they were, like, married or whatever.
Right.
And I want to say Bobby said he was married or something, and then the guy proceeded to ask who is the woman in the relationship. And I thought they explained it really well, how that is an outdated idea. And
Right.
I thought the way that they talked about that was really good, and they didn't put the guy down or anything. It was just like an educational opportunity.
Yeah, I think that is how that was a good example of how we need to have discourse in general,
Yeah.
right? It's not so much like I think the language of you're a bigot, homophobe, blah blah blah, blah all, when you start listing the labels, how is that going to encourage someone to change their way of thinking, right? Whereas if you handle it in a way that they did on the show, saying that's a bit of an outdated idea, and let me explain to you, one, how that feels, and two, how you can think about it in a different way. And then what happened at the end of that? He was like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that was a great example of how we need to be having conversations again, because we've kind of lost that, the art form of dialogue, I think, just as a culture.
And I 100,000,000% agree with that. It's really funny, though, what we're transitioning into next as we talk about being able to have those conversations. Now we're talking about Joe Biden's cabinet members. Yeah, I will admit, I'm not the biggest political person. I did have to do some of my research in some of these people and stuff. I didn't even know I missed when it was even announced who he chose, and he didn't fill all the positions yet, right?
No. They're being slowly announced. And
Yeah.
some of them are going to have to go through Senate confirmation. Some don't. So it's kind of a mixed bag ultimately. But I did a brief stint, fall of 2016. I interned in Senator Sherrod Brown's constituent services office
Oh,
in
wow.
Cincinnati, Ohio. And I don't know if you remember this, but in 2016 there was another election, and it went in a direction we weren't expecting. And so I was working in this senator's office, and my job was to field constituent opinions, right? And what that means is during that time, all I did was field questions or field phone calls from people expressing their opinions about either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. And I had to try to explain to people that, hey, the guy whose office you're calling into is neither of those two people. Why don't you call their offices? But they can't do that when working for a government office. And I think that really showed how divided people were. And a lot of people would explain Ohio was red in 2020 and was red in 2016 after being blue in both 8 and 12 and voting for Obama. And a lot of people explained their rationale. And the rationale was, I am not doing well. But I see one party saying that we are doing better than we ever have been, and you need to be grateful for it. And that's a very basic summation of the Democrats' messaging at the time. But that was how it was internalized by a lot of these folks. And then you have this other guy who's saying, shit's fucked up, I'm going to change it. What route do you think that they're going to go? Right? And then you have like the whole deplorables messaging, right? And that doesn't sit well with people. So I think back then a lot of people were pushed into a direction that they probably wouldn't have been had they not been belittled and condescended by a whole party. A party of which I am a part of, right? So I'm not just trashing on the left. I'm very much a Democrat. I worked for a Democratic senator. I voted for the Democrats always. But, Trump made sense, right? For a lot of these people. I did not vote for him. But for a lot of people, he was what was going to change things for them. And then fast forward 4 years, a lot of people were sticking by him, right? But enough of the country saw that the way he was handling just the day-to-day of the office was not normal, right? Just we shouldn't have to be glued to our Twitters and Google News and all that just to keep up with what the hell is going. That's why we elect people, to handle that, right? I don't want to have to sit here every day and keep up with what vote is going to happen here today. What scandal is happening in the Treasury Department today? Like, I don't want to have to deal with that as a citizen. That's why I elect government officials. And I think that with a upcoming Biden presidency, there is going to be some sort of restoration of normal business as usual, right? And we're getting to the cabinets here in a second, I promise. And that's going to be shown in who he picks to surround him in as his support, as his cabinet officials and everything. Because if you look at the Trump picks, he went in there, he's like, I'm going to shake up the system because this isn't working for a lot of people. And he didn't say it so eloquently, but that was the gist, right? So he's like, I'm going to take, an EPA guy who used to be a lobbyist for fossil fuels. How does that make, literally, I'm putting in these people in place to dismantle the system. I'm going to put Betsy DeVos in the education department, and she's never been a teacher or been connected to the public teaching system ever in her life. And she profits off of private and charter schools, right? So by putting in these officials that are the antithesis of what that department generally stands for, that was his way of tearing it apart, right? And we saw them not hire needed positions, right? There's the deputy, or there's the secretary, the deputy secretary, and there's a whole bunch of other mid and senior level positions that went unfilled in several departments because they were trying to actively tear it down and change the priorities of those departments, right? And with this upcoming presidency, we're going to see standard picks, right? The education secretary is going to be someone who was a teacher, right? Health and Human Services is going to be a doctor. I think he announced it already was a doctor, right? Housing and Urban Development. Our housing secretary should not be Ben Carson, right? Why does that make any sense, right? It's going to be people that are appropriate. I work in investments. I'm not going to go get a job as the education secretary, right? It doesn't make sense. My resume doesn't line up with that position, right? So you're seeing these picks come out from people who have experience in the thing the department is. And I think that's going to, regardless of what you think of the policies, it's going to restore the day-to-day operations to a sense of normalcy. And I think the Trump presidency for a lot of people was just like, we're slamming on the gas. And we have no idea where the fuck we're going. And this new guy is just going to we're just going to kind of tap the brakes a little bit and be like, all right, let's how about we put it into Google Maps? We're actually going to kind of find some direction. We're going to agree on the destination, and then we're going to, follow the directions to get there. So that's my rant on the cabinet picks at large.
Well, yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to go specifically into certain cabinet members or what, yeah. Because I know there was certain things about certain members that people might be concerned about, or I do agree though. I noticed, so for example, the Secretary of Treasury is Janet Yellen.
Janet Yellen. Mm-hmm.
And she's and I always say, so whenever I took economics in school, and whenever they would talk and stuff, I did decent in those classes, but whenever whenever they would talk, I'd be like, God, an economist, it would be great if they you need to start putting those people in charge of our money, or in the, so it is great that we do have, I didn't really see anything off with her or anything. There was at least, what was it? A big one was the Secretary of Agriculture.
Remind me his name?
Tom Vilsack. He's been our Secretary of Agriculture from, it's a 2009 to 2017. So Joe Biden brought him back.
Mm-hmm.
But there's kind of been, some weird like things with him because people think that maybe he might be he might be trying to please like corporations more than like the small time farmers. And there was a controversy with, her name was Shirley Sherrod. She was the Georgia State Director of Rural Development for the USDA. Yeah. Do you know about that?
I think here's the thing when it comes to the controversy. If you nitpick far enough into anyone's career, you're going to find something, right? Yeah, you're going to if you look at me, I think I'm a decent worker, but if you look at my career, I'm sure I made when I worked at the Cincinnati Symphony in the box office, I'm sure I made one customer pretty angry because we didn't, exchange their tickets on, what everyone's going to have some glaring thing or something that can be spun into a glaring thing on the resume. And, a lot of the criticisms when it comes to, they're supporting corporations more than the small time. What's the evidence of that? And also, what is the implications of that, right? The reality of the world is, as it stands now, is that the corporate farms are what's feeding most of this country, right? So regardless of what your stance, if you think that we should move in the direction of independent farms or what have you, that's fine to have that position. But the reality is right now, who is providing those resources? And it's going to be the larger farms. Who is providing, most of the banking? Larger banks. Who is providing most of X is going to be the larger whatever, right? So, and I am not inherently like yeehaw corporations. I think they cut corners, and some of the doings can be, sketchy. And you see the Wells Fargo scandals from a few years ago where they're opening accounts without people knowing, and people do shady shit all the time. But, and this is the big thing. What are you going to do? Okay, we just get rid of all the support for corporations. Then what? Right? The problem with the criticisms is that they're a bit short-sighted, right? And we see this a lot, like with and this is gonna probably ruffle a lot of feathers. A lot of people who are, generally like Bernie Sanders people in that camp, they're like Medicare for all and only that. It's like that's fine to have as an end goal, but what about the system that's in place now, right? We already have the infrastructure and the routes that are set, right? So it's like, what is the steps to get there, right? And during the primary, I was a big fan of Pete Buttigieg. He was my guy. And when he dropped out, I was very sad. But he was a proponent of the public option, right? Which is, in a lot of ways, a stepping stone to universal health care, right? And how it works is basically it expands Medicare, and you can opt into it, hence the public option, right? So you can buy government health insurance, and if enough people do that because it's better than the private insurance, then it forces prices to come down on the private side. That's the general how that works. Why is that a problem? Why is that considered Republican light? It's not, right? It's simply an incremental change towards the direction that a lot of people think they want to go. Also, what happens if we do a sweeping Medicare for all change and then it doesn't work, right? The way that this whole country was built, the way the whole country was built was to work slowly and incrementally. And while, yes, that can be frustrating when you want change quicker, it also keeps change from happening too quickly and upending the whole system, right? Healthcare is 1/6, I think, roughly, of our national economy. That's a lot of fucking money, right? So what do? We can't be so just cavalier about huge sectors of how this country runs. And I'm not saying that the private healthcare system is perfect. It is far from it, right? But the incremental changes over the course of several years, when you look back, look how far you've come from that initial stage, rather than trying to burn the house down and not know what's going to happen when we do. So I know I've kind of strayed from the specific cabinet picks, but my point is, when it comes to these criticisms, it's you have to think about the implications of those criticisms, right? Because everyone's going to have something, right? Susan Rice, who was just brought to, I think, the National Security Council or some name like that, she was overseeing a lot of the Benghazi situation several years back. Now, that was a big old PR spin that, a lot of the country now thinks that she is the devil because she somehow green-lighted Benghazi. None of that's true, right? There are 12-hour-long hearings that prove that, but people don't, with Hillary Clinton and Susan Rice, people don't watch those hearings. They just go, she's the demon. And that's just not, that's not how that works. But everyone's going to have some sort of baggage, whether warranted or not. So the question has to be, is this person qualified to do the job? And are they well-intentioned, right? And if someone was already the Secretary of Agriculture, then chances are they're well-intentioned, right? Because otherwise, they wouldn't have been invited back.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. Obviously, they're familiar with the job. They did it for so many years. I'm hoping they actually make some sort of change and don't just like, I feel like with certain politicians, they get in a position and then it's like, okay, now I'm just going to sit on my ass and not make any progress.
Sure, and that's a fair criticism. That's a fair hesitation, I'll say. But if you look at what they're already floating, the first thing that comes to mind is education, is looking at moving to have free college for folks who come from households that make under $125,000. Right? That's a big step that'll equalize the playing field for a lot of people. Right? A lot of the student loan forgiveness that's being talked about now has that same line in place. Right? About 125. The highest proposal, which I'd be very excited to see, is $50,000 of student loan debt waived for everyone who makes under $125,000. Right? That would make so many people debt free and able to actually participate in the economy.
Yeah,
right?
I remember seeing that. That'd be almost all mine.
Right, and so many of our generation who, millennials at large have had to live through now 2 economic depressions early in their careers. That's not something boomers have ever had to deal with. Right? So they're like, well, my loans weren't forget. Yeah, well, you also got to go to Yale for a nickel and a loaf of bread. So what the fuck are you talking about, man? Like, you look at all the numbers, the wage growth numbers and all that. It's like, it's not the same conversation. The world has changed. And Hassan Minhaj, if you're familiar with him, he comedian and he hosted the Patriot Act on Netflix, if you know who that guy is. He just testified in Congress just about this very thing, where he said, he's like, members of this committee, I found the average tuition that you paid at your colleges when you went and compared them to now. And he basically, I don't know exactly the numbers, he was like, when you went on all your averages, you paid an average of, it was like $8,000 or something like that. And he goes, those same colleges today, on average, are like $18,000, while wages have only gone. So that's a 160% increase or whatever the math is. Well, wages have only gone up 17%, and it made that point. And that's when you see the potential legislation that's being talked about to address those gaps that we've seen. I'm optimistic.
No, that's good. I mean, yeah, I definitely want to be optimistic. I'm trying not to, with my political views, I'm trying, at least going forward, I wanted it, because when we vote, it's private. I wanted to try to keep that private, which of course that's harder to do when you're talking about politics.
When you're hosting a podcast and talking about it, right?
On the air. I mean, personally, so I guess I might as well, just go a little bit into it. Personally, I was not a fan of either of the 2 main party candidates this election, but I mean, obviously one of them was going to get it because of how the system is set up at the moment. But yeah, I do hope things do change for the better with everything. And I really like to look at the individual, not just, like, for example, if someone's from this one political party, I'm not just going to hate the whole political party because of like one individual. I really look at, for example, like we could use Donald Trump for an example. I look at Donald Trump I see what he wants to do, see if it benefits me, see what he's saying. I went through his and was like, oh no. then and then I went through Joe Biden, which out of the Democrats, he was one of my lower picks out of the Democrats. I just didn't really the things he was, which at least the good news though is the things that, like you mentioned with the tuition and stuff, at least some of the things coming out now, I'm like, okay, that's good. Like it's things I actually like or that benefit me, where those things weren't being as said back then, that are coming out now. So I'm like, okay, good. That's a good, like, positive. It's just what he was saying during like the Democratic debate and everything. I was like, oh no, like this, I don't think this is my guy and stuff. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but
No, it when you're ranting about politics, it always kind of fizzles out. You're like, what did I start with? Agriculture pick? Ugh. Here we are.
But I guess that's what I meant when it comes looking at the individual. Someone like him doesn't really sound like, I looked more into that controversy and everything, and ironically, it was a story spun on that woman that he ended up believing, and that led to her being fired and stuff. So that's what I talk about when I'm saying like the individual. Like just because he's a Democrat, I'm not gonna like love him or I'm not gonna hate him or whatever. I really want to see like what they're about. But I do understand at the same time that that everyone does have certain skeletons, and we just have to we kind of, I guess, have to decide what's acceptable, what's not acceptable.
Yeah, and you know, President Obama put it really eloquently recently. He's like, if you run a purity test on anyone, they're going to fail.
Yeah.
On anyone. So you have to look at what the messaging is, and you have to look at how that resonates with you. And I agree with you that it shouldn't just be tribal and like the blue team and the red team, because that's not beneficial to anyone. And we're just going to keep seeing this flip-flop back and forth, and there's not going to be any sort of, progress together. But I am looking forward to just tapping the brakes for the next 4 years, because it was getting to be a little too much. and I'm in a very privileged position. I work in finance. I look like the way I do. So I don't have the same worries as a lot of marginalized people in this country. So I'm relatively relieved, and I'm sure a lot of people are very, very relieved. At the same token, I'm sure a lot of people are really pissed. So, but I think by slowing down a little bit and like what will benefit most people, and how do we move forward on that? I think by approaching it through that lens, is going to kind of just restore just the day-to-day normalcy of what politics once was before it got so tribal.
Yeah, my least favorite part of all this was this huge divide. You kind of mentioned it lightly, this just huge divide between two groups of people, and just, I don't know, we have to be able to respect one another regardless of our beliefs, as long as the beliefs aren't like physically harming someone or anything like that. Like we just have to, I don't know how to word it. I couldn't stand going online, for example, like Facebook is a huge platform for it, and just the back and forth bullshit. Like I just couldn't, it was so exhausting.
Right. All the keyboard warriors.
Yeah, and
the
just
libtards and the this, that, and this,
and trying to cite back to like almost like 100 BC. Like what happened? It felt like, not that it was, but that it felt like it just was like, oh my god, like is this real? Like is this argument really worth it? Like is it really?
It's not. But like I said, we'll keep talking in circles about this. But hopefully things slow down, and we can get back to what matters.
Yeah. I guess the best way to put it is how I felt about the candidates was that I felt like I had to choose a Bulbasaur that I didn't want to choose.
Don't be hating on Bulbasaur, man.
So we have a little bit of time for the last segment, which is Fishbowl, which eventually I want to get a fishbowl and fill it with hundreds and thousands of questions that I just pick out randomly, but I'm only getting 1 or 2 questions at a time. So until I get more questions, I'm not going to buy that fishbowl for nothing. So I hope I'm saying this name right. Leowens VH asks, what makes you smile? Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
I've talked a lot. You can take this one first.
Okay. Um, let's see. What makes me smile? I really didn't prepare myself for these questions at all. Dogs make me smile. I have a beautiful dog. Rapists going to prison. It's a jump up, but I mean that makes me happy.
I am very glad you said going to prison, because I was like, what on earth are you talking about here?
Like, why is he saying rapist?
Oh my god.
Oh, that's true. I just noticed that. Yeah, that's not a good.
You were just like, rapist going to prison. I was like, whoa.
You're like, whoa, yeah. No. I've watched way too much Law and Order SVU to ever approve of that. Let's see what else makes me. World peace would be great. No, but a clean planet. I hate. One of my biggest pet peeves is littering. I can't stand when people, and I'll see it too, as like you're in the car or something, and someone just throws a fucking huge bag of McDonald's or something. I'm like, motherfucker, like, like it's so unnecessary. So them getting pulled over is what makes me smile.
That's good.
How about you?
I'm such an easy laugh. Like, it doesn't take much to get. I'm smiling right now. Just like, I don't know. I love skiing, so whenever I'm on the slopes, that makes me real happy. God, anything and everything. My dogs. We have a bunny. My wife makes me smile. My family makes me smile. I like food. Food makes me smile. TikTok, I've gotten real deep into that. That's making me smile a lot lately, because people are so goddamn funny. It's awesome.
They're good. Yeah.
Goodness, I mean, anything and everything. I'm really an easy laugh. So.
And we need it too during this time.
Oh yeah. Why be grumpy, right? Where's that gonna get you, right? Just love the world. Just as hippie of me to say, but just like. Love everyone, man. You know, but it's true.
And our second question, which was from Offbeat Worm, which they're a podcast as well, and at least I'm connected with them on Instagram. You should go listen to their podcast as well. Free shout out. They asked, this is such an important question. What color is the best M&M? And I'm going to have to go with green.
See, I'm thinking it's between blue and green.
That was mine as well.
But it has nothing to do with the M&M. This is going to be like kind of a sweet thing, I hope. But those two colors came to mind because those are the two colors I like when my wife dresses in those. Those are the best colors on her. And I'm like, yeah, she doesn't look good in brown. She doesn't look good in yellow. But blue and green, she rocks it. So, and she eats so many M&Ms. That's where the connection came from. I'm looking at, actually on my kitchen counter, I'm looking at a huge family-sized bag of M&Ms, which are for her and her only, and she will hit me if I touch them. So yeah, blue and green.
Yeah, those were my choices too. Even though do they all taste the same?
They're the same.
They're all the same. Yeah, I was gonna say, because I know that the question threw me off for a second, because I was really thinking about it, because I was thinking they said Skittles, so I'm like thinking like the flavors. I'm like, wait a fucking second. This is one of those questions. I love it.
If you really want to mind fuck, all the Fruit Loops are the same flavor too.
Yeah, I know. That was very unfortunate to learn about. That really was. Yeah, so we'll end the questions at that. Thank both of you for your questions. I want to thank each and every one of you guys out there for watching and listening and sharing and commenting. Even if they're bad comments, it still is good for the analytics. So thank you for
say
that.
Whatever you want. Just say something.
Just, like it, dislike, whatever. It works. I want to thank Justin Reid so much for being a guest on the show. Thank you, Justin.
You're very, very welcome. Thanks for having me. It was a great time.
Yes. And it was a great time on your show too, which people should check that out. Nose on the Wall podcast. And the links will be in the description for that. I want to thank today's sponsors. Those are going to be played through the episodes. And I want to thank Monica Leigh, my producer. I want to thank, I want to say one more, John Moon, who does the intro and outro music for season 3 so far. He's also known as Blonde Goblin he's a pretty big TikToker, actually. So thank you for doing that for me. And yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you all so much.
And to all a good night.
God bless us, everyone.
But I got to end the show like I always end the show. I hope everyone has a super special, awesome day, and bye.